Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for coming to this very interesting event and to listening to this keynote that I am here to present with my daughter, Stella Hu. My name is Jen Looper. I'm a principal cloud advocate on the academic team at Microsoft. We're actually the next generation team, and we're all about students and faculty and the next generation of developers and programmers and people who are interested in anything technical. So we're here to talk to you today a little bit about our interesting and weird career paths, and so that you can sort of visualize yourself and where you are in your current career and where you might visualize yourself in the next 1, 3, 5, 10 years. The reason we can't do this live is because this one is graduating from Babson College on the exact same day, almost at the same hour of this keynote. So we're here just to say hello and to welcome you to the event, and we hope that you have an awesome day. We also want to talk about the effects of artificial intelligence on your career, in your domain of study, and kind of in the future, as it's something that's really important that we need to get our heads around. We need to grasp this very interesting and kind of fraught topic. So we're going to talk about those two things, careers and AI, and how they intersect. So let me just kick it off by saying hi, I'm Jen. I've been in the field of technology for 22 years now. Actually, when this one was born, I sort of switched from my initial study of interest, which was French. Actually, I'm a French PhD, Fulbright scholar, Phi Beta Kappa from Wellesley, and I still am very interested in French literature and French arts. And you can see I have little clues on my wall that give you some ideas of where my head is at, and they're usually in Old French because I'm a medievalist. So in about the year 2000, I was ready to get on the job market. I was ready to become your favorite French teacher. Unfortunately, there is not a huge growth opportunities, not a huge job market for people with medieval French PhDs, sadly enough.
Quite niche.
You know, who knew, right? Well, here we are. But the great thing is that the dot-com boom was sort of sliding to the end. It had gotten really crazy with things like really silly startups that people were launching and making $1 bazillion, and then they would crash. And that was all kind of coming to an end in about 2000 when I started in. But the lucky thing was that basically if you could do anything with HTML, maybe a little CSS, and if you're really lucky, some JavaScript, then you could get a job as a developer, a front-end developer. I thought maybe I would try tech writing or graphic design. Turns out I'm not fabulous at graphic design, and tech writing, there weren't as many opportunities, so I sort of slid into becoming a front-end developer and was developing little websites for title insurance lawyers. That was my first startup. It was called closingcounsel.com. That was a very interesting moment of my life, making the most kind of dry websites in the universe. But so that was an exciting moment. But I've also worked in small startups. The smallest one was 16. The biggest company I've worked at is, of course, Microsoft with 100,000 people or more. I've worked in nonprofits and the insurance industry, and it's been a really interesting and wild ride. I think I counted something like 12 companies that I've worked at, something like that. So it's been interesting, it's been wild, and I've learned a lot. And I'd love to give some thoughts about how you can visualize yourself getting into this kind of strange career and where you might want to take your interest in technology. But I'll turn it over to Stella here, and you can introduce yourself and talk about your career path.
Yes, so hi everyone, my name is Stella, this is my mom. Super happy to be here. This is a really interesting topic as a student especially, not only with taking online classes with COVID, but just in general it's been very relevant to my coursework. So as I mentioned, I'm a graduating senior at Babson College. It's crazy to think that I'm graduating already, but here we are. And I majored in business analytics and finance. So as you can see, those are quite relevant to what we're going to be talking about today, and I can't wait to dive into it.
Awesome. So I think what we should do is talk a little bit about how tech has helped my career path. Obviously, I've been a programmer, so it's helped a little bit to understand technologies, but the most interesting thing about being a professional programmer, and now I'm a developer advocate, is this comprehension that this is a field that changes really, really quickly, especially on the front end. Databases, the back end, a little more slowly. At the same time, who knew that they would create something like NoSQL? And then we have to switch everything we think about relational databases because this new style of database was invented relatively recently. So even the back end is changing. But the front end is changing really, really, really quickly. And we're entering this moment where we're even talking about moving from Web 2 to Web 3. Web 1 was when, we were just putting documents on the web, and if you were lucky, you could access them. Web 2 was all about more interactivity, and that's kind of where I built my career, because we're building things called SPAs, single-page applications like Gmail, so that when you click a link, the whole browser doesn't refresh, but just the little div, that just the element refreshes, and you can check your email. And that's the modality of web design that I grew up in. And maybe that's changing again. We're talking about how spas were a bad idea. I'm just seeing interesting blog posts about this. Well, who knew? We've been doing that for a long time. Well, apparently it was a bad idea because the browsers have caught up and we don't have to do these hacks to make websites be performant. But there's also this idea that maybe we are thinking of decentralizing the web and we want to move to Web 3 and maybe put things on the blockchain. I have no idea. We'll have to see how this all pans out. I'm a little concerned about the blockchain because of elements of environmentalism that I'm particularly interested in. This one's interested in crypto.
Yes, very.
Do you want to talk about crypto at all?
Yeah, I love crypto. It's definitely a very big learning curve and quite scary. You feel like you're throwing money into the void, which maybe you are. But I've really been diving into learning how crypto works as well as NFTs. I am obviously still learning, but I know that it's extremely popular, especially at Babson, for students to invest in crypto. I think there's going to be a crypto club if there hasn't already been, so I'm just missing out on that, unfortunately.
Are they going to call it Tales from the Crypto?
I should submit that.
I think it has to be something like that, right? But yeah, so my basic point is that this whole field is evolving really, really quickly, which is awesome because, you have to keep learning new things. You always have to keep, taking extra classes and training up. And, but that's the perspective of someone who's been, in the Web 2 realm for, 10, 15, 20 years. What about someone in finance? It's a different sort of aspect of technology.
Right. I think my experience is quite different than yours, in good and bad ways, just because when I was younger, obviously growing up with such a smart mom that knew everything about computer science, it's quite intimidating. I was never the kid that was good at learning languages, unfortunately. My mom speaks like 7 different languages. I was never able to grasp it. So I saw computer science kind of as another language to maybe potentially fail on, and that was super intimidating to me. Even doing computer science camps, it was one of 2 girls in my class. It's not the most welcoming environment, and I'm totally understanding of that. So my journey is quite interesting. I basically decided that I wanted to do entrepreneurship and business from a really, really young age. I would have lemonade stands where I would harass the poor workers around our house to buy 50-cent lemonade. Like, it was very entrepreneurial from the start. But I always did like tech, and I was always very curious of it. I love things that are fast moving and always changing. Very like agile methodology type of things, and I thought tech was really like that. So going to Babson, I tried to take as much tech classes as I possibly could. But what Babson gave me, which is a huge gift, is that they mixed liberal arts classes with tech. So it was a lot less intimidating for me to really get my foot in the door with tech and learn the basic skills of RStudio, Python, Java, while also feeling like I'm learning about social causes as well and learning how tech impacts the real world. So for example, one class I took was quantitative analysis and structural injustice. It's a huge mouthful, but it was an absolutely phenomenal class. We learned how to apply a bunch of different AI and tech tools to social injustice problems. So, for example, I remember one case study we did was oil wells' proximity to public schools and how that correlated to redlining. And my mind was just so blown in how I could realistically use tech and learn the skills on my own and through my coursework to solve real, genuine problems in the world. So that really gave tech a great meaning for me, a purpose. However, I really love finance and always have. Like I mentioned, I love crypto. So a lot of my different experiences throughout college with internships all had to do with finance. I tried asset management, investment banking, private wealth management. But with that, I always found myself kind of gathering and being assigned these small tech projects on the side. And I always tried to take them up and really just used Google to learn. So I taught myself VB script and ended up creating an entire automation process just for one of my internships because I thought that the efficiency could have been improved. And that really gave me a lot of confidence going into my senior year of college, just with those small tech projects that I really felt I had agency over. In an industry that seems so mathematical, the creativity side is really, really great and very underrated. So what my current role now after college that I'm starting in a few months is I'm going to be a financial tech consultant. And with that comes a lot of cool creativity. It's a rotational program, so I'm going to be joining different tech teams and learning about their tools while also applying it to financial institutions. So long story short, tech is very intimidating, and I can speak from firsthand experience that it was for me. But I think with learning about my own passions with creativity and entrepreneurship and applying tech to that, it's a really great way to be a lot less intimidated by tech and enjoy the process while you're learning.
I really love what you're mentioning about creativity and the importance of bringing your whole self into your profession. While I was, busy making websites for 20 years, there's an entire field created which is called digital humanities. I did not know about this, but it's allowed me to actually reconnect with my actual initial field of study. And I've been making data sets, which you can find on Kaggle, about French literature. There's all the letters of dangerous liaisons. I scraped them and created a data set around them so that you can do some data science. So there's all these interesting ways. And now I know who to call to help me with some of the Excel pieces of this.
I love Excel. I love Excel so much. It is so fun. And you can use it in like the back end, front end. It's so, even though it's so widely used, I think it's very underrated with what you can do with it. Long rant, but I've used it in every single course I've taken at Babson, even liberal arts courses. So I really, really love Excel.
I actually found a way to make to use it as a database for a classroom website. It was really, really
It's
fun.
so helpful.
Like, who knew?
Yeah, who knew?
But the point of all of this is that don't ever be afraid of technology.
Yes.
You'll use it no matter what. Can you think of a field where you're not going to use technology?
No, I really can't.
Even like digging in my garden, I still need, it would be nice to have data about soil moisture, and we can put the IoT in the garden. And
that's
make
our new
so much
project this summer.
So there's so many different aspects that you're going to be able to use your skills as a technologist no matter what you do. So that brings us to the second piece of this talk, which is talking about artificial intelligence.
Yes.
It's something that a lot of people are really scared of, right? They're thinking that, the robots are going to take over, and, maybe they will, but, it'd be probably smart if the robots decide to take over to understand how they're programmed, so that we can, have some kind of kill switch in back, right? And this is pretty heavy duty computer science, and there's a lot of algorithms, and there's a lot of really smart people who are dealing with managing AI. I guess my question is, have you used artificial intelligence in your study of finance, or can you envision something going forward that you'd be able to use it for?
I mean, I think everything. I took a lot of math courses in college, one being linear algebra, which was probably one of the most rewarding classes I've taken. Not even just because I love math, but because I learned how algorithms work and how AI works from the back end. So, for example, I remember one class was on the binary system and how we could do image recognition using the ones and zeros, things like that. And that can be applied to Face ID on your phone. It can be applied to anything, store cameras. But I think one thing with AI that I've learned through having courses that relate to both statistics and to social problems is that AI has a lot of ethical issues as well, or at least ethical considerations. I wrote a final paper on this, but basically it's just very important that I realized is that AI is created by humans. So there is a lot of human bias in AI. It's not just a robot that's making all of these decisions. Someone has to create that robot, which I never really thought about before, but I think that's just something to be a little bit cautious of in the future.
I think the famous story that underlines that idea is that someone created a soap dispenser where you're putting your hands under, this thing never works for me anyway.
Never.
Put your hands under the thing and you're supposed to get soap, right? Well, there's a sensor, and it's not just a motion sensor, but also some kind of like a light sensor. And it was trained on people with light colored skin, so that people with darker skin could not make it work for them at all. That's a problem of bias. That's a problem of training data, and it's a problem really of design. So these are things that are baked in, and things don't just appear magically, from algorithms generating them. There are things that people are creating. So we need to be really careful with that stuff.
Exactly.
For me, I use it. I use AI. increasingly actually in my job because I use something called GitHub Copilot, which is really, really helpful. It's basically an algorithm that's scraped all the code on GitHub, and there's millions of lines of public-facing code on GitHub, and it allows you to type in something like, the first few lines of a function with maybe a couple parameters feeding into it, and then it'll complete it for you. And it's freaky.
Weird. It's kind of like Google Docs with predicting your text, or your words, and on text it predicts your text. But with code, that's a new level, I think.
Yeah, and a lot of people are concerned because my job, there goes my job. What's going to happen?
That's true.
I don't know. I think that we have to learn how to live in partnership with these algorithms and figure out how can they help us. Where's the line between helpful and really not helpful?
Yes.
And just always be master of our own learning and our own knowledge bases. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. Do you have anything to add?
I don't think so. This is such a pleasure to come back home and film this.
Yeah, it's great. We're actually in a closet, so it's a little tight quarters. This is the Cloffice, the famous Cloffice in Boston.
It's getting very hot in here.
Yeah. But anyway, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
We hope you have an awesome day. Keep learning. Never stop learning. You'll be happy you did. And best of luck going forward.
Yes. Thank you.
Cool.